looking for a way to name the unnameable, to express the inexpressible.
Tell me more.
Okay, we'll play that. Maybe we don't have color, I don't know. My life as the life of an indie developer is tough. It's not easy. You work hard making games and nobody buys them. You take up other lines of work and try to make a living. I became a voice actor, and people don't hire you. So you spend your days doing the errands of your trade. I had been trapped by an odd series of circumstances into agreeing to have dinner with a man I'd been avoiding for years. His name was Andre Gregory. At one time, he had been a very close friend of mine, as well as my most valued colleagues in game dev. In fact, he was the man who had first discovered me and put in a good word to have to some publisher friends of his. That act of generosity later led to my first ever release. When I had known Andre, he had been at the height of his career working for one of the largest developers in America. Hey look, it's the Gilded Truffle. That's like Springfield's fancy restaurant, I think. But then something happened to Andre. He dropped out of the games industry. He'd sort of disappeared. All his family seemed only to know that he had been traveling in some place, like Tibet, or you would hear at parties that he talked to trees or something like that. Obviously something terrible had happened to Andre, like he'd wandered lost into a decrepit alleyway hanging around 10 bins with lit fires in them in the companies of burnt-out investors. But the homeless probably eating old shoes just to survive. The whole idea of meeting him made me nervous. I had problems of my own. I mean, I couldn't help Andre. Was I supposed to be a doctor or what? Wally, it's been years. I hope the Gilded Truffle isn't too modish for you. Well, you look terrific. Well, I feel terrible. Haha. Haha. So we talked for a while about various indie game dev projects, about the successes of and those that were, well, less of a success. We talked about my contributions to various games as a voice actor. So he did get hired. About my girlfriend Debbie, about his wife Chiquita, like the banana brand, and his 2 children, Nicholas and Marina. Finally, I got around to asking him what he'd been up to in the last few years. Well, I had been working on the latest installment of World of Crustcraft. Doesn't sound like a good game. World of Crustcraft a few years ago. The office culture had been going downhill at Wizard Entertainment for some time now, and it had begun leaving a sour taste in my mouth, to say the least. I heard about all that frat boy culture and all the sexual harassment on Rock Bottom. It doesn't surprise me that many of the female characters in those games are showing a lot of skin. Ha, nor me. But I will say that not all of the avatars in WoW, it's called Walk, ended up being overly sexualized. After all, about 35% of the player base is female. Upsetting that portion of the pie would hurt the hip pocket of the higher-ups at Wizards. You know, Wally? But that's beside the point. The whole place had turned into a fraternity where sexual harassment... Yes, it is dinner with Andre the game. towards the female staff was commonplace. It wasn't just happening, Wally. It was actively promoted there. Some of the women were getting harassed on a daily basis. There was unequal pay, declining promotions on the basis that they may get pregnant, even retaliation for anyone that dared to do something about it and make a positive change. Tell me more. Tell me more. One of the women committed suicide while on a company trip with a male supervisor, Wally. There were nude photos of her circulating during a company holiday, and she just broke. Reports started surfacing that many of the higher-ups knew about the accusations and did nothing about them. We staged a walkout and protest with a clear demand. Fire the CEO wizard, Blobby Cockkick. Well, it's not golf anymore. We finished our golf game. Now we're playing Dinner with Andre. All that wizard could muster was to try and settle the matter with an $18 million payout. I know. I didn't change the title. Well, we'll just call it Simpsons Fan Games. There. There, I changed the title. A slap in the face when the company is worth what? 50 billion? What number is that? I don't even know what number that is. I think it's 72 billion. 72 billion. That suicide was the end of it for me. The march in the powder barrel. That poor woman. I had to get out of there, so I resigned from Wizard and have stayed away from game dev ever since. Tell me more. Well, I left the country, went to India, and spent some time moving my neck around like a cooked piece of asparagus, then headed to Australia for some R&R. Saw a few bootings. Hey, you know the water in the toilets there spins the other way? I read about the Coriolis effect in Reading Digest, yes, and it also isn't true. Just say, Coriolis effect isn't enough to affect toilets. It's one of those myths that I believed. Because I thought Lisa was smart. And then they just made it up for an episode of The Simpsons. Of course, eventually it got to the point where I needed to express myself once more, and so I decided to come back home. It doesn't help that Australians trolled us. That's true. Tell me more. Well, now I've been asking myself what form my desire to create will take. I love to return to making games. It's something I'm just intrinsically drawn to, but I can't bring myself to come back to a AAA games development. Besides, corporate toxicity aside, the fact is that making a AAA game has become so expensive, it's rarely feasible to take creative risks from a business standpoint anyway. And true artistic expression stagnates when the primary focus is to make a product that's going to fly off the shelves. Just look at Hollywood. The two industries mirror each other. Precisely. A AAA industry can no longer afford to take the risks and push the medium in leaps and bounds like it used to. Perhaps every so often lightning in a bottle strikes, but it's the indie scene that isn't shackled by shareholder interest and is free to truly push the medium. It's a matter of scale. In the 80s and 90s, and even in the 2000s, it was cheaper to make commercial games, and it took way less time to complete them. You could make a half-baked platformer, or shamelessly clone the latest commercial hit, slap on some Krusty Burger sponsored art assets, and get the restaurant chain to pay for much of the dev cost in return for reducing the game down to a virtual advertisement. Or just skin a rushed game to suit the latest Rainier Wolfcastle action flick, force the game out of a crunched schedule to coincide with the film's release, and you'd still see a profit in the end. Have you ever played that game, Bort versus the Space Mutants? I have played Bort versus, well, I played Bart versus the Space Mutants, not Bort versus the Space Mutants. I played Bart versus the Space Mutants. It was hard. That game was hard. It's as bad as Kevin Costner's Waterworld, another game that exists that I'd like to play at some point. I don't think we played it, did we? Nowadays, though, it's a considerable risk to create a restaurant, film, or TV tie-in and remain competitive in the market. It still happens here and there, but you don't see them as often. Games become more and more generic when they appeal to the lowest common denominator, and there's more or less the end result when the widest possible net needs to be cast in order to make significant profit at these large scales of development. Sure, and many of the devs are still forced to crunch in order to meet deadlines despite huge dev timelines thanks to lousy management. There will always be exceptions, of course, but on the whole, this is the current situation. I was thinking about the indie games you made in the past, Wally. Relatively small development times, possible to complete with a small team or even just one person, and most importantly, you get to decide what you make without having to consider what the market wants from you, or what a committee of higher-ups deem to be the most lucrative course of action, for that matter. Tell me more. Sure, I know I know what you're thinking. You make retro games, Andre. I've got to say, I'm making retro games. Yes, literally retro, not retro style, but Game Boy games that run on Game Boys. That's an avenue of games development that is pretty up there in terms of niche markets. Sometimes I feel like my games have no relevance, but here is the thing, Wally. It will be relevant to someone out there. If you're doing your best to express yourself truthfully, Wally, I don't want to make products anymore. I don't want to make games that are designed by committee. I want to make games that are an expression of me. Like what you're doing. Like what you have been doing. But Andre, there's rarely any money in it. I had to take up voice acting to make ends meet. And you go through cycles of depression and anxiety and back to elation when you finish something. Both those Bart games suck. And the dev team that made them sucks. They use the sound effects and coding on other games, so it's obvious when you see one. The cycle just repeats. It doesn't matter what artistic medium you chose as well. In fact, I was thinking of throwing in the towel. Get a 40-hour-a-week job, get some financial security, and just move on. No, Wally, keep at it. It's in this space where true artistic vitality lives. Screw the money. I mean, of course you have to do what you can to pay the bills, but outside the needs of survival and whatever you can muster to live somewhat comfortably, untethered self-expression and self-exploration is a reward in itself. Not the money, not the social media likes or the follows or the sales numbers or whatever you read about your work on betterthantv.com. Yes, there is the inevitable roller coaster with its ups and downs, but will you really have it any other way? And you're right, it doesn't matter if you're a painter, or a writer, a coder, a filmmaker, or a game designer, or even if you're just putting a barbecue pit together. We artists can only just continue creating, honing our craft, and hope that our work connects with someone that enriches their lives in some way. This is enriching my life. So what are you proposing here, Andre? Let's go into a partnership, Wally. Let's make a game together. Speak from our hearts, take a risk or two, and see where the wind takes us. What do you say? Alright, Andre, why not? Let's do it. Fantastic. Hey, Andre. Yes, Wally. I've been waiting a long time for this waiter. Oh yeah. Want to get a burger? Certainly. The Gilder truffle sucks anyway. Don't know what I was thinking. Is that the end? That's it? Game over! Yeah! Alright. I mean, for a basically an 8-second clip in a Simpsons episode, that we got this game. This was a result of an 8-second clip.